Discover a world where love and loyalty are tested by the shadows of power and betrayal and bound by shadows and Alpha's dilemma. Dive into the heart of a forbidden romance that transcends the boundaries of tradition in Whispers of Betrayal, Alice's Tale. Unravel the secrets of a mated bond that holds the fate of an entire pack in Tangled Fates, Trent and Alice's Bond. 1. My mother brushed my hair gently as I sat between her legs. It was late, I had just gotten into my PJs. "You know, one day, Mommy won't be here to do this for you," she spoke as she ran the brush through my hair again. I scooted myself away before I turned to look at my mother. She looked so much like me, brown wavy hair with green eyes that looked like fresh leaves. Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. "What do you mean, Mommy?" I questioned. "Are you going somewhere? Can I come?" She shook her head at me. "It'll be when you are older," she smiled. I nodded before I turned back around to let her finish brushing my hair. "Do you know what a mate is?" she suddenly asked. "A mate?" I shook my head at her. "You know how Mommy loves Daddy?" she asked. I nodded. As a young child, I knew my parents were deeply in love. They showed it as much as possible. "Well, that's because Daddy and I are mates." I could hear the smile in her voice. "It means we love each other unconditionally. We are bonded through souls." I heard her sniffle slightly. "I want one of those," I smiled. I pretended I knew what she was talking about, but I was still stuck on what the word unconditionally meant. "Well, that's a good thing. When you are older, Mommy and Daddy will take you to the neutral ground, and you'll get one," she chuckled. "How do I know which one is mine?" "They will pick you. It's a big game of hide and seek in the forest, only meant for unmated wolves to find their mates." "Oh. Hopefully he'll brush your hair just like this," she smiled. That was the end of our conversation for the night. We did talk about mates every night. Appropriate stuff like what I would want to wear or how I would have my hair. As I got older, I learned more about mates and how they bonded. 3 days before my 18th birthday was when I went to the ceremony. I had to beg my parents to ask the Alpha if I could go, since it was so close to my birthday. At first they didn't want to, but after a few months of pestering they gave in and asked the Alpha. He agreed immediately, as long as I signed a bunch of consent forms. The night of the mating ceremony was chilly. I only had on a navy blue dress with my white cardigan hugged tightly to me, along with my winter boots. As promised, my mother and father were there, along with my stupid younger brother Carl, who was only a year younger than me. I stared at all the people lingering around, waiting for the whistle to blow. Most of them were girls my age or a few years older. I haven't seen many guys that seemed attractive enough. I felt bad, but they all seemed like teenage dirtbags who thought they were all alpha males who would get free pussy for the rest of their life. "Remember what I told you?" My mother broke me out of my train of thought. "Always be obedient," I smiled as I tried to hug the cardigan tighter to me. "It'll be over soon." She rubbed my arms, an attempt at trying to warm me. "What if I don't like them?" I felt my chest tighten. "Then you can reject them," my father stated simply. I nodded, thankful there was a way out in case I didn't like the man who chose me. I was about to speak once more, but the whistle blew. "All the girls line up, please," a plump woman shouted in front of the forest. My parents gave me a tight smile of encouragement while my brother just nodded at me. I broke away from our mini-group to join the other females. The girls were lined up in front of the forest where the plump woman stood. "Now, I know you are all excited, but you must remember the rules," she spoke in a very monotonous voice. "First, you don't go until the whistle blows." Her eyes narrowed. "Second, pick a hiding spot. Don't be stupid and pick an obvious spot. We might have fights. And no one wants to deal with that." A few of the girls in line grumbled to themselves. "Third, you can reject the person who chose you, but it isn't ideal unless you have a good reason." The girls stayed silent. "Any questions?" the woman snapped. A few girls raised their hands. The woman pointed to a petite girl with blonde hair and a red dress. "Is it true Alpha Valentine is coming this year?" she asked. I could practically hear the fear dripping from her voice. "I'm not allowed to disclose that information," the woman dismissed before she pointed to another. I didn't listen to anything after that. Instead, I focused on how the snow glistened under the moonlight. I was too caught up in the fact that an alpha was in the games this year. Alpha Valentine was rumored to be a murderer, womanizer, and cannibal. Other rumors were floating around about him, which I tried not to pay attention to. The ear-piercing sound of a whistle snapped me out of my daze. I quickly looked up from the ground to see most of the girls had already started walking into the forest. "Go on, runt," I heard the plump woman grumble. I felt a stabbing feeling in my heart. Runt. I would show her who was a runt. I may have only been a little above 5 feet tall, but I wasn't a runt. I forced myself to walk towards the forest with the other girls. I had silently prayed to the moon goddess Selena that I would find the perfect mate. I wanted someone who was going to love me, cherish me, and accept my family as their own. I didn't need a big house or fancy cars. I didn't need someone of high status. I just wanted them to accept me. In the forest, I watched as small animals ran to hide in the snow as a mob of teen girls ran past them to find the perfect hiding space. I remembered what the plump woman said, pick a good hiding spot. I could do that. I knew I only had a few minutes, but I knew that if I went further into the forest, or further away from the girls, I would find better spaces. I walked straight until I was a couple of 100 feet into the forest, away from the other girls. By the time I reached a good spot, I heard the faint blow of the whistle, along with the distant howls of unmated wolves who had started marching into the forest. I barely had enough time to dive into a bush before I spotted the males at the edge. I tilted my chin up to quiet my breathing as I curled myself up into the bush. I shut my eyes and tried to relax. Time seemed to be at a standstill as I waited for a male to find me. A few minutes later, I heard a few women scream with delight as they were found. Part of me felt proud. I had a great hiding spot only a patient one would find me. Every few minutes I heard their joyful screams, and with each one, a new sense of pride filled my chest. I was going to be one of the last ones found. I soon forgot about the thought of a mate, and the mating game became a competition for me. After a while, the adrenaline rush wore off. I started to feel the nip of the cold at my skin. I wrapped my cardigan closer to me in hopes it would give me a little warmth. The screams of joy had died down, and I was bathing in silence. I contemplated getting up, but I still had a subconscious need for someone to find me. I don't know how long I had been there, although I did know I was freezing and giving up hope. What if none of the males were able to find me because I hid so well? Why hasn't someone found me by scent? I dropped my head to my knees when I felt the tears rise, which blurred my vision. I didn't get much of a chance to cry because I heard the crunching of snow. At first I thought it was an animal. I quickly realized it wasn't. As the crunching sound became closer, I smelt the beautiful smell of campfire smoke and caramel candies. I had never smelt it before. It was almost like a Bath and Body Works candle, if only they made a candle that smells good. I didn't lift my head. I tightened my grip around myself. If it was a male, they were going to have to really search for me in order to get to me. I almost jumped at the sound of the bush I was in rustling. I didn't get a chance to look up before they bent down and picked me up effortlessly. They were almost as cold as I was. They had probably been out for a while searching for me, or whoever the fuck was left. I gripped onto their t-shirt as they carried me out of the bush and through the forest. I was too cold to talk, so I just snuggled up to them for warmth and so I could get more of that mouth-watering smell. We walked for a few minutes until I glimpsed up at the man. He had stunning green eyes with midnight black hair that hung down past his shoulders. He was very muscular. I could tell he was of some sort of authoritative position as he reeked of it. I couldn't pinpoint if it was an alpha, beta, or gamma. He kept his eyes forward as we walked. Questions danced on the tip of my tongue, but I knew that I would either never get to ask them, or they would have to wait until after the ceremony. I looked away to see we were getting very close to the forest's edge. I felt my heart start to pound as I realized that night would be the last night I spent with my family. I had no idea where this man was from, nor did I know if I would ever be allowed to see my family again. I heard my mother before I saw her. "Where is Alice?" Her voice pierced my ears. I felt the tears start to rise to the surface again. "I think she is still hiding. I hope someone finds her soon. I'm freezing," my little brother complained. "Come on, Carl, you know you want to see a good male pick her," my father scolded. "All the best couples take a little longer." His words made me smile. I had hoped the man who had me in his arms would be like that to our children if we had them. Yeah, Carl muttered. Tears wet my cold cheeks as we walked out of the forest. "Where are your parents?" The man's voice sent a shiver up my spine. His voice was a little husky. I pointed to my family that was meters away. He didn't set me down. He just carried me like I was something precious until we reached them. As he was carrying me, I felt everyone's eyes on us. A few wolves muttered, but nothing that I could hear clearly or understand. I buried my face into his chest again, hoping to cover my blushing cheeks. I heard my mother gasp as I lifted my head to look at my family. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "This can't be," she spoke. What I asked, my voice wavered. "Excuse me, Alpha, I mean no disrespect. But you can't be my daughter's mate," my mother's voice wavered as mine. "Why not?" I snapped, my eyes filled with another wave of fresh tears. "That is Alpha Valentine," my brother whispered loud enough so I could hear. Alpha Valentine, the name everyone came to know after he became Alpha of his pack 6 years previous. He was said to be bloodthirsty, attacking anything and everyone in his path. He had never been to the mating games before, so no one really expected him that year. Alpha Valentine stayed silent. I could feel his arms tighten around my small frame. "I don't think that is our decision," my father spoke. My mother shot him a glare. "We can't just let her leave with him," Carl snapped. I felt Alpha Valentine's chest rumble with a growl. "We need to talk to Alpha Carlson." My mother crossed her arms over her chest. My brother shot Alpha Valentine a glare before he turned on his heel and left us. We sat in awkward silence as we waited for Carl's return. I had hoped that Alpha Carlson would tell me I couldn't go with the Alpha, but I knew that since I had signed papers stating I agreed to take part in the mating games, it was highly unlikely. Carl returned shortly with an annoyed Alpha Carlson. He greeted Alpha Valentine with a curt nod. "What's the problem?" he snapped as he glanced at my parents. "Alpha Valentine can't be her mate," my mother snapped. My father crossed his arms over his chest. "Why not?" Alpha Carlson asked. He looked to me. I dropped my head in submission. "You know his reputation," my mother scolded. I felt Alpha Carlson's eyes on me. "I know, but she did sign the papers stating she agreed to be here." I looked at Alpha Carlson through my lashes. He was glaring daggers at my family. "Alpha Valentine, can you please put down Miss Welch, so I can speak to her and her family for a moment?" I felt everyone's eyes on me. Alpha Valentine placed me down. My mother grabbed me before I could blink and dragged me away with an annoyed Alpha Carlson in tow. "You better reject him," my mother hissed as soon as we were earshot away. My palms started to sweat at the thought of rejecting Alpha Valentine, someone who was rumored to be a cannibalistic, bloodthirsty murderer who killed everyone in his path. "I can't," I whimpered. Carl and my mother glared at me. "She is right," Alpha Carlson interrupted their glaring session. I raised my eyebrows at him. "If she rejects him, he could go on a rampage, and I don't know about you, but this pack couldn't handle another war." It was true. We weren't a big pack, nor were we the strongest. "But this is my baby we are talking about here," my mother whimpered. Alpha Carlson glared at my mother. "If she goes, we can build up our pack and our strength, and we can rescue her," Carl pointed out. "Or we could just use her to create peace between the packs," Alpha Carlson snapped. I slowly felt my anxiety levels build as well as a wash of anger. My brother shook his head. "No, I can't allow my big sister to be taken by a complete psycho." I turned to my younger brother. He had always been a bit protective over me, but he had never acted the way I had seen him that night. "I don't need rescuing," I finally snapped. The group turned to me shocked. "Do you seriously want to go with that lunatic?" My brother grabbed me. The instant his hands were on me, Alpha Valentine growled. I knew he was paying attention, but I almost forgot about his presence a few feet away. "Don't touch her like that," I heard him snap. His deep voice forced a whimper out of me. Carl released me and took a step back. "I don't have a choice." I felt my eyes welled up with tears once more that night. My father looked at me sympathetically. "You always have a choice, Alice," he told me. "Damned if I do, damned if I don't," I mumbled before I turned on my heel and sped walk to Alpha Valentine, who was waiting for me. He looked slightly relaxed at the fact I was walking back to him. "Alice," my mother shouted after me. "Leave her. She made her choice," my father grumbled. I knew nobody was happy with my decision, but I couldn't have wolf's blood on my hands. In the back of my mind, I prayed to the moon goddess that he was nothing like the stories portrayed him as, but I knew with my luck he would be that, and much worse. Alpha Valentine wrapped his arm around my waist once I stopped in front of him. He wasted no time pulling me close, making his claim known. Wolves looked away from us. Fear filled their eyes. I kept my eyes pinned to the ground until I smelled my brother. His smell was familiar, cedarwood. I had been raised with that smell. It had become one of my favorites, but it now made dread wash over me as he dropped my suitcase at my feet and left without another word or glance. I knew he would be upset with my decision, but I was saving lives. Alpha Valentine grabbed my suitcase with his free hand and led us to his car, a black SUV. He threw my suitcase in the back seat before leading me to the passenger's side. He opened the door for me and lifted me into the car. Once I was secured into the car, he closed the door and made his way to the driver's side. As we pulled away, I watched my mother and brother as they glared daggers at me while my father looked almost proud. I felt he knew what I was trying to do. Bring peace. The drive was silent, except for the heat that blasted out. The cardigan had done nothing to keep me warm, and the dress offered no protection. They were both damp from sitting in the snow for goddess knows how long. I have no memory of falling asleep on the drive. Maybe I was too exhausted to even care I was in a car with a stranger, one who had rumors of cannibalism and bloodlust tainting his name. I woke up when the passenger door opened, revealing Alpha Valentine. His green eyes glanced over my exhausted frame before he picked me up. I barely had enough time to glance at the little wooden cabin before he carried me up the driveway. He carried me all the way to the door before he gently placed me down. He pulled a set of keys out of his pocket before he unlocked the door. Meet me in the kitchen at the breakfast bar. I'll be in. In a moment his voice was calm, almost as if he was talking to a child. Technically I was a child, but that would soon change. I entered the little cabin that looked like a house on the inside. The smell of campfire smoke and sweet caramel candies washed over me. I kicked off my boots before I set them aside on the mat. I looked around. At first glance, there was a wooden staircase that led to the upstairs. On the left, on the right side, was the living room. The floor was covered in a dark gray carpet. In the middle of the room was a dark gray L-shaped couch. In front of the couch was a gray brick fireplace with a TV mounted on it. The wall with the fireplace was a dark navy blue that practically matched my dress. I walked through the living room into the kitchen. The walls were a dark navy color. The cabinets were white, as well as the appliances. The countertops were made of gray quartz, as well as the top of the breakfast bar. The three little stools were black with navy cushions on them. I sat on the far left one and waited for Alpha Valentine. He met me in the kitchen as stated. "Do you like hot chocolate?" he asked. The question surprised me. He was standing across from me behind the breakfast bar. "Yes, Alpha." I kept my eyes on the gray quartz at the breakfast bar. "My name is Trent, not Alpha." He seemed annoyed. "Sorry," I mumbled. He hummed in acknowledgement. "Would you like a mug of it?" "No, thank you." I shook my head. "You can look at me when I talk to you, you know," he muttered bitterly. "I'm sorry, I just don't want to disrespect you." I shrank into the bar stool. "You don't have to submit to me." I heard him shuffle around. I glanced up once I heard running water. Trent was filling a small kettle in the sink. Our eyes met briefly before I blushed and turned away. I'm pretty sure he chuckled in amusement, but I was too anxious to tell. He resumed his position behind the breakfast bar once he placed the kettle on the stove. It was pin-drop silence as we waited for the water to boil. I didn't like the silence, but I figured it was better than him running around screaming. "I assume you have questions." His statement broke me out of my trance. I shrugged. "You can ask me anything." He leaned on the breakfast bar. It just barely reached his waist. "How old are you?" I blurted out. 24. "How old are you?" 17. "I only got in by signing consent forms." I muttered the last part. The hair on the back of my neck raised. As his soft green eyes darkened to a deep forest green, he was not pleased with me. "How long until you turn 18? He gritted out. "Only 3 days. If it was any longer, my Alpha wouldn't have allowed me to join the game." I felt myself slowly start to shrink into the chair. Trent let out a breath of air. My heart sank knowing he was disappointed. He was practically mated to a child. Nobody would be happy in his situation. "How did you find me?" I blurted out. I had hoped the new question would have distracted him. "I walked straight until I caught your scent. I wasn't sure for a while if you were in the game since you were so far away, but when I saw, in fact, you were hiding, I decided to pick you." He shrugged. His voice still had its razor-sharp edge. He didn't say anything more. He just turned off the stove where the water was before he turned back to me. "It has been a long day. I think we should go to bed," he stated plainly. I nodded in agreement. "Where do you want me to sleep?" I asked, unsure of his feelings. with me, he almost snapped. I forced back the tears as I slid off the seat and followed him out into the living room and up the stairs. There were only 3 doors on the top floor. One led to a bathroom, which I only saw because the door was open, and the other 2 were bedrooms. Trent's bedroom was a navy blue with one wall that was mostly a window boarded with wood. Black curtains covered it. A wooden bed covered in black sheets was pressed against one of the walls. The carpet matched the one in the living room. I spotted my suitcase right away on the bench at the end of the bed. I quickly threw open my suitcase and pulled out my PJs and toothbrush. I entered the ensuite bathroom. I didn't look around, I just brushed my teeth and changed. When I entered the bedroom again, Trent was already in bed, tucked under the covers. I turned off all the lights before I clumsily made my way to the bed. I pulled back the covers and slid in. I made sure to sleep at the edge of the bed with my back turned to him. I knew he was still disappointed, and I didn't want to give him a reason to snap. 2. Thanks to Alpha Valentine's 7 a.m. alarm, I was awake. Actually, that is false. He got up while I stayed in bed and tried to sleep longer. I was no longer on the edge of the bed when he slid out. Instead, I was only a few inches away from where he previously was. I had tried to fall back asleep as soon as he left the room, but instead, he came back a few minutes later with a cup of coffee in hand. "Alice, it is time to get up." His morning voice was slightly husky. "I'm still tired," I grumbled back. He only let out a sigh before he entered the walk-in closet to get changed. I curled myself up into the sheets once again to gain more sleep. The sound of a coffee cup on my bedside table startled me. How did he get dressed so fast? I was about to open my eyes, but Trent roughly grabbed the blankets and ripped them off. I shivered as the cold air attacked my skin, leaving goosebumps. "Please, get up," I heard him grumble before he grabbed his mug again. I once again ignored his request and tried to burrow myself into the sheets like a mother polar bear at the beginning of winter. I guess Trent had lost his patience, because I heard him slam his mug on the dresser before I was roughly picked up out of bed. I wrapped myself around Trent in my half-awake state. He stiffened but never said anything. I opened my eyes to be met with his piercing green ones. They darkened slightly into a deep forest green before returning to their regular shade of green. We kept our eye contact for a while, just basking in each other's awkward presence. One of his large hands rested against my back while his other rested against my left thigh. He was dressed in a pair of clean boxers, leaving everything out for me to view. I guess he had enough after a few moments because he was the first to break eye contact to put me down. My butt barely hit the cold bench before he walked away from me and back into the walk-in closet. He came back out moments later with a black suit that fit him like a second skin. He looked attractive and regal. He straightened out his suit jacket before he left the room without so much as a look in my direction. I waited stunned for a moment before I followed him out of the room and downstairs. I flopped myself on the couch as he poured the remainder of his coffee in a travel mug. With slow steps, he approached me. He sat on the end of the couch closest to the door. "Since this is your first day here, I won't be such a prick about things, but now that you are my mate, I expect dinner to be ready when I get home, and whatever needs to be cleaned is cleaned." His facial expression seemed hardened. Okay, I forced out. "Did I look like his fucking maid?" As if he read my mind, he clarified, "I'm a very traditional man, Alice." I nodded at his words. I had always looked forward to staying home and taking care of the house while my husband was away, but being demanded it happen made a sour taste in my mouth. "What time will you be back?" I crossed my arms over my chest and shifted to look at him. "Around 6, he spoke. I simply nodded before he stood and left the cabin. I spent most of the day watching TV and trying to find things to do. I made our bed at some point, but it ended up getting messed up when I crawled in to take a short nap. When 6 o'clock rolled around, I had just set the plates of fajitas on the breakfast bar that I had made for Trent and me as he walked into the kitchen. He had removed his suit jacket, and his long hair was a bit frizzed, probably from the weather. "It smells good in here," he complimented before he took a seat at the breakfast bar. I blushed. "Thank you." I waited for him to be seated before I sat beside him. Dinner was quiet. As soon as he was done, I took the plates and washed them as he went upstairs. He came back down several minutes later with damp hair. He wore a pair of jeans and a white tank top that fit him like a glove. I could see the outline of his muscles underneath. He sat in the living room and flicked through channels until he found something that interested him. I didn't pay attention to what was on TV. Instead, I focused on my phone, which I had pulled out of my suitcase earlier that day. Thankfully, it hadn't been damaged after being in the cold so long, then tossed around. I didn't look for long before I shut it down and curled up on the couch. I closed my eyes only meaning to rest them, but when I opened them again, I was in bed. My eyes adjusted to the dark enough that I could see Trent. He looked relaxed, but I could tell it wasn't 100%. His black hair was sprawled out around him on the pillow. His arms were up, making them look like he was flexing. I was about to reach up and glide my fingers against his sharp jawline, but his stupid alarm went off. I pulled my hand back just before his piercing green eyes snapped open. "Morning," I squeaked out. He groaned in response. I didn't get a chance to say anything else to him before he slid out of the bed. The bathroom door closed shut behind him. Just as I was slipping out of bed, I crossed the room and opened the blacked-out curtains. The sun had barely risen, making it look like watercolors were spilled in the sky. I didn't realize Trent had gotten dressed until I felt his presence behind me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. I nodded. "One day I'll take you to see the northern lights." I felt his hand brush against my arm ever so gently. Goosebumps appeared on my pale skin as he turned on his heel and left the bedroom. I changed into a pair of jeans and baggy t-shirt before I joined him downstairs. Just as he was about to leave, he pressed a quick kiss to my forehead. It was so light that if I wasn't paying attention, I wouldn't have felt it. I felt the blush appear on my cheeks as he closed the front door behind him. I had spent the day much like the day before. This time I didn't take a nap. I had found my phone on the couch, so I called my old house. I knew that I would never be able to refer to it as my home again. Trent or my mother would lose their shit on me. Alpha males are very protective over their mates. To humans it seems like borderline abuse, but in the animal kingdom, if you don't protect what is yours, you'll lose it. I dialed the old house number. I had memorized it in case of emergencies. My palms sweat so much I had to wipe them on my jeans. It felt like forever before someone picked up. "Hello, Alice," my father's hoarse voice greeted me. "Hello, Dad," I smiled. "What do I owe the pleasure of hearing your voice today? Is everything okay?" Concern laced his words. No, I'm okay. I guess I just miss home," I sighed. "How is Alpha Valentine treating you?" "Pretty good. I'm basically a housewife, but I don't mind it much." I heard him chuckle through the phone. "You would have been that in this pack too." "How's Mom?" my father groaned. "Your mother has been, well, not happy," he admitted. "Carl." "Worse," my father laughed. "Do you think they will ever forgive me?" I felt the tears bubble to the surface. "Your family," he let out a breath. "Of course they will." "Good." I brushed away the few stray tears with the back of my hand. "Are you still?" My father took a shaky breath. "I don't even know if I can ask you this," he chuckled. At first I was confused. Was I still what? A wolf. Very much so. Was I still terrified? Very much so. Then it hit me. My father was trying to ask if Trent had made me complete the mating process. "I know what you mean, and I'm still as innocent as I left. He hasn't even kissed me," I complained. My father let out a sigh of relief. I had to laugh at his awkwardness. "That's good," I guess he laughed. "Well, I better let you get back to your wifey duties." "Okay, I love you, goodbye," I smiled. "Love you, goodbye," he rushed before the phone beeped, cutting off the conversation. Like clockwork, Trent arrived at 6 o'clock again. I had made a mac and cheese casserole. Like the night before, we ate in silence, no mention of how our days were, or what I had been up to. As soon as dinner was done, he showered and came down in his casual clothes. We watched TV in silence and went to bed in silence. It was very odd. When I had heard of Alpha Valentine, I had expected him to be a very loud, demanding, and assertive person. He was dominant and demanding, but he barely ever spoke. But as they say, the silent ones are always the deadliest. January 16th was one of the weirdest days I had ever experienced. It also happened to be my 18th birthday. I was woken up by Trent's alarm as I had been the days previous. We got up and dressed without speaking as usual. Trent poured his coffee into his travel mug, as usual. Instead of leaving as quickly as humanly possible, he called for me at the front door. I got up from my spot on the couch and approached him. He had his regular stone-cold expression on his face. His green eyes beckoned me until I was only a couple of steps away. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. With his free hand, he gently pulled me closer, I could feel his warm breath fan my cheeks. He removed his hand from my waist. He brought it to my chin and gently curled his fingers around it slightly. I flushed as I looked up into his beautiful green eyes. He bent, so his face was close to mine. He didn't say anything before he pressed his lips to mine. They were soft, but rough with the passion and dominance. He was letting me know who I belonged to. He ever so slightly started to move his lips. I attempted to mimic him, but I only became clumsy. I stepped a little closer before I wrapped my arms around his neck. He dropped his hand from my chin and placed it back on my waist. He tasted of coffee and caramel. They were a beautiful combo. He was the one to pull away first. I didn't get so much as a word or smile before he pecked my forehead and headed out the door. I spent my birthday pretty much doing little things to keep me occupied until 6 o'clock. I did manage to take a walk outside the house. I discovered we had a little deck in the backyard which had a couple of wooden chairs. They looked like they were meant for just admiring the view of the forest behind our house. I walked around the house until my fingers became numb from the cold. For dinner, I prepared my favorite, Mexican chicken with rice. For dessert, I whipped up a peanut butter pie. I had just turned off the crock pot when Trent walked through the door. He kicked off his shoes before he beelined for the kitchen. He greeted me with another passionate kiss on my lips before he sat at the breakfast bar. I placed a plate in front of him as quick as I could. He thanked me with a quick nod before he dug in. I made myself a plate and slid on the bar stool beside him. "How was your day?" He broke the silence with his husky voice. "It was all right," I shrugged. "Did you do anything?" I took a walk outside the house. "Ah," he chuckled. "That's why I could smell you outside." I blushed. "The deck is beautiful. I think in the summer I will sit out there in the mornings." "It is beautiful," he agreed quietly. We ate in silence for the rest of the dinner. "I hope you saved room for dessert," I told him. As soon as he stood to leave the kitchen, I had just grabbed his plate. "I think so," he mumbled. I nodded and turned to the sink. I dropped the plates in the sink and filled it with warm, soapy water. I had just finished washing the dishes when he came downstairs. His hair was damp again. He wore his casual black jeans and an old band shirt that looked like it came out of the 90s. In his hand, he held a little navy velvet box. I had turned around just in time to see him pull it out of his back pocket. A pit in my stomach started to form. A velvet box only meant one thing: a proposal. I knew that it was a tradition once finding your mate, but I was hoping it would have been held off longer. I towel-dried my hands as he made his way to me with the velvet box in his hand. It looked tiny in his massive hand. With a quick motion, he grabbed my left hand. With his other, he flicked open the navy blue velvet box. With his thumb and forefinger, he snatched the tiny ring out of the box and carelessly tossed the box to the side. The ring was gorgeous. It was white gold with 3 navy blue stones on top. "I hope this fits," he mumbled before he gently slid it on my marital finger. "Please wear this from now on," is all he said about it. His expression was stone cold. It made a shiver run down my spine. I just nodded before he pressed a kiss to my forehead. I had to admit the ring looked gorgeous on my finger. I had just wanted for the ring to be given with love and romantically, not after I just got done doing dishes. I ignored the twisting feeling in my gut as I sliced us each a piece of the pie. We ate in silence as we did with dinner. "I think next month I'll introduce you to the pack as Luna, but that doesn't mean you get to start bossing me." Or my pack around his voice was bitter as if he was talking to his worst enemy. "I would never want to." "Good." He shoveled the last bite of pie in his mouth before he stood up. "I'm going up to bed," he announced before he left the kitchen and practically stomped up the stairs. What the fuck was that all about? I cleaned up as fast as I could so I could join him for bed. I was just about to turn off the kitchen lights when my phone started to ring and the screen lit up. "Home." I immediately picked up and answered. "Happy birthday," my father's warm voice greeted me. "Thank you." "How was your first day of being an adult?" he asked. He sounded off, but I couldn't place my finger on it. "It was all right," I shrugged. "Just all right," he sounded shocked. "Well, there isn't much to do when Alpha Valentine is at work." Understandable, he trailed off. "So listen, have you seen Carl?" "No, not since the mating games ceremony." "Why?" Well, him and a group of teens are missing, as well as a couple of our buses. We were just wondering if you had seen them or not. Disappointment washed over me like a harsh wave. So he wasn't just calling me to wish me a happy birthday. He wanted to know where his son went. I knew my brother was important, but after that conversation, it felt like the only reason he had called was for Carl. If it was for me, it would have been earlier in the day when I needed it. All right, if you see him, give me a call. My father's voice broke me out of my silent rage. All right, love you, goodbye. I stiffed back a cry. Once the phone beeped, I let it all out. I had expected that coldness from my brother and mother after the ceremony, but not my father. My father was supposed to be my supporter. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sobs. I didn't want to alert Trent, nor did I want to let him see me cry. I thankfully didn't cry for a long time. When I finished, I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and made my way upstairs. Trent was already ready for bed and asleep, so I quietly made my way to the bathroom and brushed my teeth. I tossed and turned all night. I barely got any sleep. Eventually, I just gave up trying to sleep and just went to the living room to watch TV. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, I thought I heard a car outside the house. I ignored it and turned back to the TV. I didn't pay much attention, thinking it was just me hallucinating after having no sleep, but then I heard someone try to open the door. I froze, my blood ran cold as the doorknob continued to move until it eventually opened. I stifled a scream in order not to bring attention to myself. The intruder stepped in and closed the door behind them. I gently tried to shift myself into the corner of the couch in order not to be seen, but it was too late. 2 silver eyes captured mine. The man smiled, a genuine smile that sent shivers up my spine. Luna, he greeted as he stomped the snow off his expensive dress shoes. He shoved the keys in his pocket before he kicked his shoes off entirely. W, who are you? I wanted to slap myself. My voice was so shaky it only seemed to amuse the intruder more. I'm Beta Sebastian. I came to remind Alpha Valentine of his meeting with Alpha Cain this morning. He rolled his eyes as he shuffled through the living room into the kitchen. I also ran out of coffee, so I'm here to steal yours. He chuckled as he made his way through the kitchen to make himself a cup of coffee. Does Alpha Valentine know you have a key to his cabin? My voice was still shaky. The Beta scoffed. Of course not, he would kill me. When he finished setting the coffee maker, he sat on the couch beside me and watched the TV. How's living with Trent? He asked. His silver eyes seemed to study me. I sighed, quiet. That's nothing new with him. He is a man of few words. He likes to keep the talk short, sweet, and straight to the point. The Beta laughed. I don't know how I feel about that. I kinda like having conversations with people. I shrugged. Plus, I just don't like how creepy his silence is. Even when he talks, he has no emotion to his voice. It's like living with a sociopath. I blushed once I realized I had just ranted to someone just like him. That's Trent for ya, the man smiled. He has been like that since we were kids. He trailed off. Are the rumors true? I blurted out. Sebastian didn't look the least bit shocked at my question. It depends on what you heard, he replied. I've only heard he is a womanizer, cannibal, and murderer. Womanizer? I'm not sure. I haven't seen him with too many women in the past, mostly because he is cock-deep in work most of the time. The Beta chuckled. I don't think I have ever heard about him being a cannibal. He shook his head. Unless you count if he is getting laid, then maybe. He winked. I cringed at his overly sexual humor. Murder? Sadly, yes, he has killed. The Beta quieted down. He got the Alpha title very young. People were constantly questioning him if he could handle it. He turned ruthless for a bit, but finally everything settled down. The Beta turned to me. Trent is respected for being ruthless. I don't think you have the power to change how he is, so if that was your idea, I think you should just pack up and go. Trent will never stop being ruthless. It is just who he is. His voice was stone cold. I don't plan on changing him, I mumbled. The Beta smiled. Good, he turned to the kitchen. Coffee? Sure, I mumbled. I hadn't had coffee since I arrived in Trent's pack. I had almost forgotten what it tasted like. He handed me a cup of liquid gold. As soon as the first drop hit my lips, I had to hold back a moan. It was almost as if my body was craving caffeine, but I had just been ignoring it. I also hadn't slept since the morning before. After a few minutes of sipping coffee in silence, I had fallen asleep. I had no idea how, but when I woke up, the house was empty, and it was close to 11 o'clock. I went upstairs to the bedroom I shared with Trent. The bed was already made. I made my way back downstairs when I smelt the all-too-familiar smell, cedarwood. It was distant, but I knew that scent from anywhere. I tried my best to stay away from the windows and doors to avoid any ambushes if anyone knew I was a Luna, and they had something against Trent. I could have been paying the price. That night we had dinner in silence, I cleaned in silence, and we went to bed in silence. I thankfully fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow, and I was out like a light until morning. 3. My days were long and boring. It was the same old routine every day. I woke up at 7 a.m. I kissed Trent goodbye, cleaned or watched TV, made dinner, ate in silence, and went to bed. It was all very boring. After 2 weeks, I had finally spoken up. We were eating dinner again in silence. I had repeated what I was going to say all day in my head. It took me most of the dinner to build up the courage to talk to him. I was still very wary. "I'm very bored when you aren't at home." Trent straightened up and looked at me. His green eyes studied me for a moment. "What do you want?" He sounded amazingly calm, but I could tell he was a bit weary. "I don't know, maybe some books, or like puzzles." I shrugged. I was childish, I know, but I couldn't think of anything other than a job, and I knew very well Trent wouldn't have approved. "I guess I could take you into the city tonight." He turned back to his meal. Relief swelled in my chest. I was going to leave the house. I hadn't left the house except for the rare walks outside. I anxiously waited in the living room for Trent to be done changing. I had made sure to clean up as quick as humanly possible, knowing that Trent didn't want to be long. He obviously liked staying home when he could. Trent came down in a pair of jeans and a gray sweater. Even in casual clothes, he looked attractive. He shoved on a pair of beat-up Converse before he looked at me. Like the idiot I was, I had already had my shoes and coat on. I probably looked ridiculous to him. Outside, Trent held open the car door for me and helped me get in. Once I was in and buckled, he closed the door. He was on his side and in the car within a few seconds. Our drive to the city was silent except for the heat blasting. The radio was off, and we never spoke. I didn't dare touch anything in his car. I would have froze before I touched the heat, so I let him control the temperature. And since he didn't put on any music, we didn't have any. The city was very clean. It was filled with stores and little shops. In the distance, I spotted a large building that looked like the one my Alpha owned back home. It was Trent's office. I was pulled out of my thoughts when Trent stepped out of the car. I didn't even get a chance to open it before he was there and helping me out. We were parked in front of a large bookstore. The cold air nipped at the skin on my face as I stared at the books in the window. I love to read. Seeing all the newest books in that window made me feel like I just spotted a really hot male. I was pulled out of my thoughts when Trent grabbed my hand and started to lead me to the front door. The door jingled to signal to the owner that we had arrived. A few people peeked their heads out from behind a few shelves. They all lowered their heads in submission when they saw Trent. "Go pick out a few books you like." He unraveled his hand from mine and placed it on my mid-back to give me a little shove towards the books. I gave him a quick smile before I walked away to find my favorite section, the classics. The shelf was quite tall and fairly wide. The smell of brand new books filled my nose. The smell of new books made my heart flutter. My fingers instinctively brushed against the spines of the books. My eyes glanced over the titles until I spotted one of my favorites, Moby Dick. It was a book that my mother had read to me on and off throughout my childhood. Even though my small mind didn't understand a lot of what she was saying, the sweet lull of her voice drove me to sleep with it. I grabbed the book and placed it in the crook of my other arm. I felt Trent's presence close behind me the entire time. I really didn't mind it, but at the same time it felt awkward to be followed in my favorite place. By the time I had finished looking at the shelves up and down, left to right, and right to left, I ended up with 4 beautiful books: Moby Dick, Pride and Prejudice, Lord of the Flies, and Jane Eyre. I knew I would have something to do for at least a couple of weeks, depending on how much time I had to read. I felt awkward as Trent paid. I never really had a guy, let alone a grown-ass man, buy me things. I knew he was my mate, but it still didn't feel right to let a man pay for everything. It was something that was drilled into my head from such a young age. Men always pay, but why did it feel so awkward and wrong? Trent didn't seem to mind. It was probably just junk change to him. Once he was done paying, he grabbed my hand and gently led me out of the bookstore. I thought we were done for the night. I tried to walk back to the car, but instead, he tugged my hand towards another. We walked for a while, hand in hand, until we reached a toy store. I was very confused. I may have been only 18, but I was not into toys. Did he think of me as a child? He let go of my hand to open the door for me. He motioned with his hand to walk in. I raised my eyebrows at him before I entered the store. The store was filled with pups running around, screaming, and crying to their clearly annoyed or frustrated parents. As soon as Trent entered, the commotion stopped, the pups stopped in their tracks, the crying stopped almost completely as they noticed their alpha had stepped in. Trent greeted them with a nod. They all bowed their heads until Trent dismissed them with a wave of his hand. A woman who was only a little taller than me approached us. She had beautiful red hair and pale skin. She was slim with all the right curves. Her eyes were a piercing blue. They made me want to take a deep breath at their beauty. Alpha, she respectfully greeted with a small bow. What can I get you and your? She looked at me with a curious expression. Mate Trent finished for her. Her look of confusion turned into a mask of surprise. Oh, I'm so sorry, Luna. She bowed her head at me. I gave Trent a look begging for help. He ignored it. She raised her head, but her eyes were glued to the floor. What can I help you find? Puzzles. Puzzles? I was quite confused until I remembered. I had requested puzzles. He had remembered. The woman looked slightly puzzled before she motioned for us to follow her. She led us to the back corner, where there were metal shelves filled with puzzles. Some of them were the 4-piece puzzles meant for growing pups, but a few of them were a couple of 100 pieces. I decided to grab a puzzle that contained 500 pieces. The picture was of a few pugs. I liked pugs. I think this one is just fine, I told Trent. Are you sure you don't want another? He cocked his head slightly. I nodded. He sighed but took the puzzle from my hands and led me to the cash register. I again awkwardly stood with him while he paid. When we were done in the store, he grabbed my hand and led me out of the store, back to the car. He gladly carried my bags for me, even though I insisted I could carry them. He gladly opened the car for me and waited for me to get comfortable before he set my bags in my lap. The drive home was silent. We had the heat on again, but still no radio. I was buzzing with excitement to get my books home. I sat so I could stare out the window. We had just left the city, and were now on a dirt road that led us to our little cabin in the woods. We parked in the driveway a few minutes later. Trent told me to stay in the car before he shut it off and opened his door. It gently slammed behind him as he walked to my side. The cold air and a distinct scent hit my nose when Trent opened my door. Cedarwood. It was faint, but I recognized it. I shook it off, assuming I was imagining things. Trent grabbed my bags again and slugged them in the crook of his arm before he helped me out of the SUV. When I was out of the car, he slammed the door shut. He looked down at me. Our eyes met. I broke the eye contact to stare at his lips. They looked soft. I had kissed those lips almost every day, but the urge to feel them against mine was terrifying. I had never had that desire before. I wanted to reach up and cup his face in my hands. I wanted to bring his face close to mine and kiss him until we both couldn't feel our lips. I wanted to lace my thin fingers in his hair as he brought me closer to him. I wanted to feel him close to me. I looked back at his eyes. He was staring at me with a look of pure curiosity. My heart caught in my throat as I pushed myself to my tippy toes. He backed away slightly until I placed my hand on his shoulder. He furrowed his brows slightly. I removed my hand from his broad shoulders before I wrapped it around his chin. I gently pulled him close to me. He didn't really move at first. Part of me started to get frustrated. Did he not get the hint? I took a step towards him. My chest was practically pressed against his lower chest and stomach region. I tried to bring him close to me again. This time he brought his head down for me. I carefully watched him as I tilted my head up slightly so I could press my lips against his. I closed my eyes as my cheeks flushed before I pressed my lips to his. I gave him a quick kiss before I completely pulled away from him. I gave him a small smile. Thanks for taking me shopping, I spoke above a whisper before I turned on my heel and walked towards our front door. He followed close behind. The door slammed closed behind us. I didn't look at Trent out of embarrassment. I kicked my shoes off before I ran upstairs to get ready for bed. I showered as quickly as possible, knowing that Trent would need the bathroom. I changed into a pair of PJs before I brushed my teeth. When I came back into the bedroom, Trent had changed into a pair of boxers. He was sitting in bed, brushing his long black hair. His large arms were flexed as he was trying to reach behind to brush it out. His face was twisted into a grimace. I shuffled to my side of the bed. "Here, let me help you." I climbed into bed and got on my knees behind him. I pushed his flexed arms down and grabbed the brush from his hand. He didn't say anything as I started to brush his hair. For its length, it was surprisingly healthy. It barely had any split ends. I started to brush his hair from the bottom up. Occasionally, I would accidentally catch a knot, and he would grimace. When his hair was all brushed out, I decided to play with it. I don't think he was happy with me playing with it, but I didn't really care. I braided it into a beautiful French braid. Voila, I smiled once I was finished. He turned to me with his usual stone-cold face. Before he turned back around, I quickly Yuan braided it and combed it through with my fingers. I climbed under the covers as he got up to turn off the light and put the brush on the dresser. I felt myself start to relax once the bed dipped with Trent's weight. I closed my eyes and started to fall asleep, but Trent's arm wrapped itself around my waist. I was brought to his chest. He pushed away some hair from my face and neck before placing a quick kiss behind my ear. It sent a shiver up my spine. He then moved down to the place where my neck met my shoulder. He placed a hot kiss on it before he started to slowly suck on it. Goosebumps appeared on my skin as I held back a moan. I felt a tightness in my stomach as he moved me, so I was under him. He held his weight up with his forearms as he kissed and sucked up and down my neck. I knew the next day it would be severely bruised. I held back my moans and whimpers until he reached a certain spot, and it slipped out. He froze before he smiled against the spot. He continued to attack it with his lips, making whimpers and moans slip out of my lips. By the time he was done executing his torture on me, I was shivering with desire. I felt a dampness in between my thighs. I blushed as he ran a thick finger from my jaw down to my bruised flesh, to the bottom of my shirt. He paused for a moment at the hem of my shirt before he changed directions and went to my pants. He hooked the fabrics with his fingers before he pulled them down my legs. He sat up just as he pulled them completely off and threw them onto the floor. I tensed up and tried to close my thighs together. He gently pried them apart before he sat between them. He leaned down to kiss me on the lips before he took his teasing finger once more and trailed it down my hips. My eyes adjusted as I gasped when he gently pushed a finger into my heat. I arched my back as a moan ripped through my throat. His thumb pressed gently on the bundle of nerves before he started to move his fingers. The combination of his finger moving in and out while his thumb rubbed circles on the bundle of nerves made the pit in my stomach grow. I stopped caring about everything around me. Instead, I was focused on the mind-blowing pleasure that Trent was giving me. Moans and whimpers started to flow out of my mouth as the pit in my stomach grew. Like floodwater, my orgasm hit me at full speed. I didn't have time to prepare for it. It just hit me. Trent didn't stop his torture until he knew I had ridden it out completely. I laid in bed with a layer of sweat covering my skin. Trent's fingers were still deep inside me. I was trying to take deep breaths to calm my racing heartbeat. He slowly pulled them out of me before he stuck them in his mouth and sucked. It was the most erotic thing I had ever seen. He smirked at me before he moved to his side of the bed. He pulled me to his side once more before he closed his eyes. I sat in silence until I heard Trent's breath deepen as he drifted to sleep. The next morning was like any other, except this time I woke up after Trent and I had no pants on. Trent had managed to get up, get showered, and changed without waking me in the process. He wasn't in bed when I woke up, but I could hear him in the kitchen. I crawled out of bed and threw on my PJ pants from the night before as Trent walked into the bedroom. He was carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed me one before taking a sip of his. I tried not to blush, thinking of what he did the night previous. I didn't think I would be able to look at his fingers or mouth the same. "I was just about to come to wake you," he told me. I nodded. I led the way out of the room and down the stairs. I watched as he poured his remaining coffee in a travel mug like every morning before I followed him to the door to kiss him goodbye. I spent the rest of my day reading my new novels and putting together the puzzle until Trent came home. I had made dinner, but I didn't clear the puzzle off the breakfast bar. As Trent walked in, I had just made the plates and set them by the stove so I could clear the breakfast, but Trent stopped me. "Just leave it. We can eat in the living room tonight," he greeted with me a kiss. I smiled up at him before I handed him his plate. Trent turned the hockey game on so we could watch it as we ate dinner. When dinner was done, I took his plate so he could go upstairs to change. As I was washing the dishes, Trent came down. He wrapped his arms around me and kissed my bruised flesh. I jumped out of shock. It didn't hurt, It was just sensitive and awakened another side of me. "What did you think of last night?" he mumbled into my skin. I sucked in a breath. My cheeks flushed. I liked it. I curled myself up to hide my blush. He reached down and took the half-washed plate from my hand. He gently tossed it back into the dishwater before he grabbed my hips and forced me to turn around. I had to tilt my head back to meet his eye contact. "What was that?" he smirked. "I liked it," I tried to say with a little more confidence. "Good," he kissed my forehead before he let go of my hips. Without a word, he turned back around and made his way to the breakfast bar. He eyed the half-completed puzzle suspiciously, as if it had a secret. "Why do you like puzzles so much?" I shrugged at him. "I don't know. They are just fun for me," I said, as I tried to wash the dishes. "Can I try?" "Go ahead." I turned to throw him a smile. I watched for a while as he struggled to put a few pieces together. When I got done the dishes, I joined him at the breakfast bar and helped him put the rest of the puzzle together. When it was finished, we had a picture of 3 pugs on our breakfast bar. "That was fun," Trent mumbled before he opened the puzzle box and started to put the pieces back in the box. Bedtime was pretty easy, although I felt awkward sleeping beside Trent, especially after the night previously. Trent wrapped himself around me once more before falling fast asleep. I followed shortly after. The next day was fairly slow. I had cleaned once again, even though it was only a few rooms that got used regularly. I didn't want to see Trent upset with his house being gross. I also felt obligated to clean because I lived there rent-free. I was in the middle of cleaning our living room when I caught the familiar scent of cedarwood. It was mixed with the smell of rogue. Rogues smelt like rotting corpses, which was how most packs were able to smell them when they were near. I froze in my spot on the couch. I knew without a doubt who it was, and I knew without a doubt that they wouldn't hurt me. I just couldn't tell if they were with anyone else. Someone knocked on the door with great hesitation. I stood up and dusted myself off. I felt the sweat start to form on my palms as I walked towards the front door. I tried to wipe it off on my pants. The door had never seemed so scary to me before. I pushed away the fear I had and just opened the door. There he stood. He was a little taller than he was a few weeks ago. His shaggy brown hair was greasy and matted. His green eyes were sunken in as if he hadn't slept or ate. His black t-shirt was coated in mud, as well as his ripped jeans. He was smiling and holding a bundle of red roses. I cleared my throat. "Hello, Carl. 4. The boy I had grown up with sat at my breakfast bar looking completely different than how I had left him. He sat awkwardly in his seat, as if he was preparing to be scolded. "Why?" was all I could choke out as I set a plate of pasta in front of him. As much as he didn't like to admit it, I knew he was starving. The life of a rogue was not easy. You leave your pack and have to survive on scraps or the generosity of others to survive. Knowing Carl, I knew he had no plan. He had probably been bribed. He dug into the meal I had made for him without a word. I left him alone to finish his meal. I had no words for the guilt I felt. I made my way to the living room to watch television. I had no idea why he would have chosen the life of a rogue. Our parents had told us the life of a rogue, and it sounded like a nightmare to us as children. I sat in the living room until I heard his fork hit the empty plate. I turned my head from the television to see he had turned to me. "Still hungry?" he shook his head. I ignored him and made him another plate of pasta. While he shoved it in his mouth, I gathered a few things I knew he could take for the road to either keep for himself or share with his group. I found an old paper bag in one of the drawers and stuffed everything in it. I even stole one of Trent's metal water bottles filled with water to give to him. I tried to gently place the paper bag in front of him, but it came out a slam. "Why?" I asked again. "Why what?" he cocked his head. "Why did you go rogue first all? You know the lives they live, how could you?" I tried not to scream at him. "Second of all, why did you steal those vehicles? Where were you planning on going?" I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. He started before he looked out the window. "I came to get you." I saw the tears well up in his eyes, making them look glassy. "Why?" I asked. "Alpha Valentine is evil. He kills people. He abuses women. The list is so long I can't even list it," he practically shouted at me. "But you don't know that for sure," I told him. "I can smell him all over you. I know you wouldn't let him touch you, so it had to have been forced, he grumbled. It wasn't, I mumbled. He glared at me. You are such a whore, he screamed. I am not. I felt the tears start to fall to my cheeks. How could you betray your pack? I didn't betray them. I got chosen to be someone's mate. I didn't get to fucking choose, I growled. You had a choice. You could have rejected him. I didn't, I cried. You did, Mom, and I suggested it. You were just too stupid to do it. I wasn't being stupid, Carl. I was saving lives, I told him. You are just so fucking stupid, he shook his head at me. I'm not. I was just trying to keep my pack safe. Well, you did it. Now we can leave, he motioned towards the door. I'm not going, I stomped my foot. Why not? I don't want to. Are you in love with him? Carl looked me dead in my eyes. No, I replied. It wasn't a lie. I knew I was developing feelings for Alpha Trent Valentine, I just didn't love him. Then you can come with me, I'll protect you, he insisted with wide eyes. I can't, I argued. Do you want coffee? I changed the subject. Carl gave me an odd look before he nodded. I walked around the breakfast bar and made a pot of coffee. We sat in silence until the coffee maker spit out the last bit of coffee into the pot. So how does he treat you? He broke the silence. Well, he hasn't hurt me. I met his beta and found out a little bit about him. So I'm not so scared, I shrugged. What did you find out? He asked. He isn't a big man whore like I thought. He does kill, but it was only to prove himself. That seems nice, Carl lied, I laughed. Coffee is ready. Same as always, I stood from my seat. Triple, triple, he smiled while making a finger gun motion. Disgusting as always, I laughed. It is better than 1 cream and 1 sugar. That shit is almost as gross as drinking straight black coffee, he gagged. Shut up, I mumbled as I dumped 3 spoonfuls of sugar into a coffee mug for him. Carl stayed for a while. We talked, we laughed, we cried over multiple cups of coffee. It was almost time for dinner to get started when he finally decided that it would be best if he left. I knew I wouldn't see him ever again, or if I did it would be dangerous. I felt guilty. It was my flesh and blood I was practically throwing out. Do you want a shower before you go? I said the words before I could think them over. He looked at me wide-eyed. Would you mind? He sounded almost relieved. I shook my head. I got up from my spot at the breakfast bar and led him to the staircase. I led him to the bathroom meant for guests before I went back downstairs and cleaned up the mess we had made. I had just finished cleaning up the pot when Carl came downstairs wearing my black sweatpants and an old black t-shirt that I used for PJs when I was super cold. They fit him, I'll give him that. I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind, he grimaced as he ran his fingers through his damp hair. I shook my head. I don't mind at all, he visibly relaxed. I grabbed his bag I made for him before I met him at the door. He thanked me as I handed it to him. I felt the tears start to well up in my eyes as he shoved on his shoes. I'll see you soon, he mumbled before he wrapped me in a massive hug. I wanted to tell him he could never come back, but I didn't. I just wanted to hold my baby brother one last time before I never saw him again. He practically ran out the door as soon as we broke apart. I love you, I mumbled to myself as I watched him run away into the trees. I closed the door as soon as I couldn't see him anymore. I turned on my heel and spotted the roses he brought on the breakfast bar. I sighed before I looked around for a vase. I found a large crystal one under the sink. I filled it with water before I set the vase on the breakfast bar and admired them until I had to start dinner. That night I had prepared dinner and had just set it on the breakfast bar when Trent barged into the house. His dark forest green eyes were wide and frantic. Alice, he all but screamed. Yes, I shouted back. I wiped my hands on my pants before I went to greet him at the door. He spotted me, and without a word he rushed to me. He took my face in his hands. His touch was surprisingly gentle, despite his anger. Why does my house smell like a rogue? He growled. I knew it would be no use in lying. I felt the tears well up in my eyes. Are you trying something behind my back? No, my brother came to visit me, I choked out. Without my permission, he cocked his head slightly. He was trying to intimidate me. I nodded. Nobody enters my home without my permission, he growled out. I'm sorry, I stuttered out. I had no way to contact you, I shrugged. "Call me," he practically shouted. "I don't have your phone number." His eyes didn't soften once. "That'll change," he growled before he let go of my face. He backed away and stomped his way through the living room and up the stairs to our bedroom. I held back the tears as I ate alone. I wanted to eat and get away as quickly as possible. Angry Trent scared me. It was a wonder I didn't get worse than yelled at. Trent came down in casual clothes as always. I had just shoved the last mouthful of food into my mouth when he sat beside me. "Our bedroom smells like the fucking mutt," he growled. I quickly got up and threw my plate into the sink before I ran upstairs. I could feel Trent's eyes on me, following my movements. I threw our bedroom door open before I raced to grab my stuff. I grabbed my toothbrush out of the bathroom and a pair of PJs before I moved to one of the guest bedrooms. Unlike our bedroom, it had a small television on top of the dresser. I threw my things on the dresser, beside the television, before I turned on a random movie. I sat in the cold bed trying not to cry. It was the first time I could tell Trent was really angry with me. I hated it. The feeling of guilt ate away at my stomach until the late hours. I brushed my teeth in the ensuite bathroom before I crawled into the bed. I missed Trent, even though he was only down the stairs. I didn't want to see him at the moment. I knew we were both on edge, and I didn't want another argument. I kept the television on, in hopes it would lull me to sleep, but as my eyes started to feel heavy, the bedroom door slammed open. "What are you doing?" Trent demanded. "Trying to sleep," I tiredly grumbled. "Not here you aren't," he said before he made his way to the bed. He scooped me up effortlessly before carrying me back to our room. "We aren't going to be that couple, Alice," he snapped. I was too tired to argue, so I just let him place me in our bed before he tucked me in. He placed a kiss on my forehead before he made his way to his side of the bed. I was just about to fall into a dreamless sleep before Trent's arm wrapped itself around my waist and brought me to his chest. When I woke up the next morning, Trent's arm was still wrapped around me, and my back was pressed against his naked chest. I gently flipped over to get a closer look at him. Thankfully, he didn't wake up. His skin was pale and almost completely flawless, and he was muscular, which suited his tall stature. In his sleep, he still looked guarded. His black brows were furrowed, and his lips were shaped into a small frown. I reached up and gently ran my fingers against his jawline. His skin was smooth, almost as if he had laser hair removal. His lip twitched almost as if my touch tickled his skin. I continued to run my finger up along his jaw for a few seconds before I traced his lips that seemed to draw me in. I felt him move, which startled me. I removed my hand just before he opened his eyes. "Morning," I mumbled. "Morning." He moved his arm from my waist before he stretched his arms. His face scrunched up slightly as he let out a groan. He shifted away from me before he completely slipped out of bed. I wasn't surprised at his coldish behavior. I had gotten a little used to it. The day was spent like any other. I cleaned most of the house again because the smell of rogue was still very prominent. I hated cleaning again, but after the night before, I really didn't want to get yelled at. That night I had dinner ready as always. Trent came in and kissed me hello before sitting and eating. It was very awkward after the fight, especially since I didn't believe I had done anything wrong. Yes, I had given away one of his metal water bottles without him knowing, but all I saw him drink was coffee. I knew he wouldn't miss it much. We sat in awkward silence until Trent decided to speak. "So how was your day?" he asked. His eyes were glued to his plate. "It was fine," I mumbled. "What did you do?" "I cleaned again." "Thank you," he mumbled. He almost seemed embarrassed. For I was completely confused. "Cleaning. I know you did a lot yesterday, but I really don't like the smell of those mutts," he grumbled. "It wasn't a mutt. It was my brother." I gritted my teeth. "I'm sorry, but I can't call them anything else while they are hurting my pack," he snapped. "What do you mean?" "Since you came here, rogues have been attacking us left, right, and center. They keep leaving notes demanding you to be sent back to your family. I can't fucking let that happen," he snapped. I looked at him speechless. "Oh right, I'm the big, bad, evil alpha. I show no emotion. I don't care about anyone," he shouted before standing up and storming off. I tried not to take his meltdown personally, but I felt my heart break just a little bit. Trent didn't sleep in the bed that night. He shifted and spent the rest of dinner and the night in the forest. I was about a week away from meeting the pack. It would be one of the biggest days in the pack for me. I was to officially become a Luna. A Luna was supposed to be the feminine energy in the pack that balanced out the alpha's harsh ways, but in my case, I assumed I would have no say in what went on. I knew Trent ran his pack how he liked it, he knew how to run it, and I didn't. Although his way of life was a bit sexist, I understood why. I was trying on the dress Trent had bought me for the ceremony. It was navy, and had sleeves that reached my elbows. They were made of lace. I had been practicing looks with it, so I could impress my new pack, but nothing felt right. I was just about to take off the dress when someone knocked on our front door. I quickly threw my hair up before answering the door. It was a woman. She was tall but slim. She had straight jet black hair that reached her mid-back, her eyes were gorgeous forest green, and he was wearing a burgundy blouse with jeans. Her thin lips were curled in a friendly smile. "Hello," she greeted me. "Hello," I shifted from foot to foot. "I'm Michelle. I'm Trent's mother. You must be his mate," she smiled. "Yes, I'm Alice," I blushed. "May I come in?" "I come bearing gifts," she smiled as she held up a plate of cookies I hadn't noticed before. Of course I smiled. I opened the door more for her to step in. "Thank you," she mumbled as she took off her shoes. "Do you like coffee?" I was just about to put some on. "I love coffee. Who doesn't?" she smiled. I laughed as I made us a pot of coffee. Michelle made herself a little spot on the couch in front of the cookies. "Is my son treating you well?" she asked. "Yes." "Good." I didn't mention to her the fact that we were still very much on edge. I was still hurt at his comment, but he was too busy to notice. Michelle and I spent the day together talking about girlish things. I had hoped she would have talked about Trent's childhood, but she didn't even touch on the subject. Michelle finally left with her empty plate a few minutes before Trent got home. She had given me a big hug goodbye before leaving, which calmed my nerves. When Trent walked into the house that night, I could easily tell he was upset. His eyes were blazing with fury. I tried not to show him I was afraid, but I probably looked like a deer in the headlights. "Why do I smell someone else?" he asked. "Your mother came to visit," I replied simply. "How do you know it was my mother?" he snapped. His gorgeous green eyes were turning dark. "She told me." "Oh well, I'm sure that everyone is just a good person," he mocked. He hung up his coat before he met me at the breakfast bar. He stood over me as I worked on putting the plates out. "I suppose you are just going to let everyone in my house," he growled at me. A burning feeling filled my chest as he said it. I got a sudden burst of courage, so I slammed the plates on the breakfast bar before leaving the kitchen. I didn't leave the cabin even though I wanted to. I just went upstairs and went to the guest bedroom for the night. I woke up the next morning in bed with Trent. I wanted to punch him in his face for making me feel like shit, but I knew he could easily hurt me. He woke up as soon as he heard me try to move out of the bed. I ignored his look of concern as I prepared to start my day without him. I almost made it out of bed without him, but he gently grabbed my arm before pulling me, so I was under him. "I'm sorry," his voice was soft, softer than usual. "I know I have been a complete asshole to you. I'm stressed, and I know I shouldn't take it out on you." He kissed my forehead. "I forgive you, but you owe me an actual kiss," I smiled. He smirked before leaning down and placing a kiss on my lips. It quickly escalated because next thing I knew, Trent's face was in between my thighs and his hair was gripped in my fingers.